Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Spotlight Conversations. Thank you for making the time and joining us. And today, if you were with us last week, we said we will be continuing the conversation from last week. So we are still looking at spirituality and everything spiritualism, as much as we can unpack it. So just a reminder that we are live, so please send through your comments, your questions, send them early so that we see them on time, and then we can actually address them. And if you have any further thoughts on this, it would be interesting to hear what everyone is saying out there. As usual, I'm not alone. I do have my guests on stage. So we've got Umfundisi Ungosi, who's our resident pastor on the panel. And then today we are joined, because we always like bringing in the young energy and the young mind into the conversation. So we have Usizo Msipa, who's coming in and bringing in not just her own experiences, but also a different perspective that can add flavor into this conversation. So welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let me just do a quick recap, Mfundisi, to bring us where we are from last week. So we defined spirituality as resulting from the search that people have in terms of who am I, what do I want, what is my purpose, what is my meaning in life. And we said because of that, there's that yearning to answer those questions. And so we need to look outside of ourselves. And said there's a sense of that there must be more to life than just me. There must be more just to existence, something bigger than the self. And so that search, that spirituality is a way of defining that. And that us as Christians attribute that something more to God. So the foundation of our spirituality is God. But even people who don't believe in God attribute that to something. So there's something that they'll actually ascribe that to. And then we also then looked at that as human beings we have, you called it tripartite nature. We've got our physical nature, our intellectual or mental nature, and we've got our spiritual nature. And we spoke a lot about that spiritual nature, that it's that part of me that connects with God. It's a part of me that God gave to Adam when he breathed life into that dead clay. And it's a part of you that leaves you when you die and goes back to where it actually came from. And then we went into talking about angels and demons, I guess the spiritual beings. And this is where we left off. And why I'm bringing this up, because I think there's a loop that we need to close there. So there's two incidents in the Bible that I'd just like us to unpack quickly. In Genesis 6, around the time of Noah, the Bible refers to sons of God who saw daughters of men. And then it refers to them as giants, that they then gave birth to giants. And so we've seen many interpretations of what this actually is. And some interpretations are saying that these are now fallen angels who were then having relations with human beings and gave birth to things that are a hybrid between those two. But then you also have other interpretations, again Christian interpretations, that says no, it's the sons, the offsprings of Seth and the daughters from the line of Cain, right? So what is it? What is being referred to when it talks about sons of God versus daughters of men?
Thank you very much, Sad. A few things we need to note about the writing of the Bible. The whole Bible was, well, the New Testament was written, Old Testament was written 2,500 years after Adam. So there was a long period of traditional education, education taught from one mouth to another over generations. And as you know, life, certain distortions can come in. But in the writing of the Bible, there was a collective activity. Before Moses died, he appointed 300 people called the Mezorites. Yes. Their task was to wake up in the morning, dress, eat, and then dress in a clean gown. There was a clean gown for every day. That's how they respected the writing of the Bible. And they then met in some place to copy the Bible, to multiply it. There was ink for writing in the beginning. When the scribe had written those words, he would shut the bottle, put the pen aside, take a deep breath, open another bottle, take a pen, and write God without breathing until he is done. And then he shuts that bottle, puts the pen away. Human breath was not supposed to land on the word Yahweh. That's how sacred this duty was. When one dies, they were replaced. And by the time the Bible was collated and designed the ways you find it during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, when Moses had long died, who then put the Old Testament into what it is now. The canon was generally set. It could not be changed in any major way without infringing on its meaning, content, and intent. So the writing of the Bible required a lot of work. And what else should I say around it?
Well, you're still trying to get to the sons of God.
Yes, yeah. Now, no celestial beings came to this world. First, because by the time the writing of the Bible had started, were fallen creatures. The devil, by the way, did not start here. He started on other planets and was told, "We've heard about you. Please stay away from us." So we should not have been the one who fell. It should have been another planet elsewhere, but they drove the devil away. Now, sons of men.
Sons of God.
Sons of God, yes. That expression has nothing to do with celestial beings. There are interpretations that say people from somewhere slept with human beings. That is not the fact. Sons of God are the children of God. It is those who had aligned their lives with his will. Remember also that the inhabitants that God placed in this earth were much taller than some of us. Adam was double my height. And when the Bible discusses that, it merely tells you that there was waywardness in the process, because our condition has been that of sinfulness since we ate. There's nothing exciting you are going to get out of giving an exotic interpretation of sons of God and the daughters of men.
But Mfundisi, that could just be a chosen interpretation, because those who choose to interpret it as the fallen angels, then describing it's called the Nephilism,
yes,
the giants that came out of that, are subscribing it to also books that were written at the time. So, for example, the book of Enoch, which is not in the canon, granted, yes, or the Apocrypha, which is... So is it not just us, again, selectively interpreting a meaning that we want to ascribe?
Not necessarily. There are no, except demons who sleep with people. There are no extraterrestrial beings who slept with earthlings to give birth to remember, the genetic order was determined at creation, right? Mm-hmm. The genetic order was designed at creation by God when he gave birth to Adam and Eve. No extraterrestrial beings came to sleep with any of us, except demons whose intention was to distort human spirituality and purpose.
So can demons sleep with human beings and give birth to human beings?
No. Even what I'm telling you requires a bit of examination. Sometimes demons occupy you, occupy a person, and then he acts in a manner that is out of the normal, because there is a new paradigm in this person's soul. Unfortunately, we are creatures that can be occupied either by godliness, or Sataniness. That's the challenge. I also do want to say that the devil wants to throw into God's stew his own ingredients, so that by the time over the ages you meet the stew, it is so tainted, you don't believe that there was something ever genuine about it. Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is that these sons, so you're taking the first interpretation that says these were just the offsprings of Seth,
Yes.
who were mixing with the offsprings of Cain.
That's right.
And because of the moral degradation at
That's
that time,
right.
that's what you're saying.
Remember also, I want to come here with something else that sometimes becomes problematic. You remember when Seth was told that he had done evil? He said, the Bible gives the impression that he went away from
You mean Cain?
Cain, yes, to some other place. Remember the canon appears 2,000 years after Eden. And so they write post-historically about events that took place 2,500 years ago. And they write as though the events are happening now. The fact that he went to the land of Nod, which at that time did not have that name, meant that it got the name later. You got the point? Got the name later. Remember also that the Bible is not designed to give us all details about life. The primary purpose of the Bible is to tell us that God created us, we got lost, he redeemed us, we need to obey him. That's the summary of the Bible.
So what was the problem with the daughters of Cain?
Daughters of Cain.
Yes, so if you're saying that daughters of men were the daughters from the lineage of Cain, were they really condemned just from Cain?
These were people who had inherited an evil nature, in whose genetic trail was the tendency to want to sin or to rebel against God or to rebel against the law.
But so were sons of Seth. They were born into a sinful nature.
All of us are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then what's the issue here then? What is the issue if other human beings are making babies with other human beings who are all equally sinful? Why? What's the issue?
The idea is that the Bible likes focusing on a group of people who have a particular tradition, and another one who might have an opposite tradition. Children of God and children of men, children of the devil, children of God. It uses expressions of that nature to define a group of people who either obey or disobey. But I would like us to tackle this subject alone in a future discussion.
Okay, I'll pause that
Yes.
there. I'll come to you, Caesar. There's another verse that's been a bugbear for me, and I'm
Okay.
hoping I can get some response. 1 Peter 3 verse 19 talks about Jesus in his death
Right.
visiting the spirits of those who had died during the time of Noah to minister to them. Kuthwani mfundisi?
Let's not deal with that one today, because I will need a discourse, and the discourse might divert us from this highway we started last week. It's a major issue. I'm not running away from the issue. Abopan?
I'm going to hold you to that because
Please
it
do.
is in my mind. It's all linked because it's still talking about its spirituality. That God, it says, He died in His flesh and in His spirit He went and He ministered to the spirits of those who had died. So we do need to look into that because it talks to also what we spoke about last week about when I die in the spirit, and then you even said Akho kabad, His spirit somewhere in heaven.
Yes. I would like us to focus around the death of Jesus Christ. It's a big thing. Because there are other people who say, can a God die? What type of a God is this who dies? You get the point? Because if we're going to extend that discussion, we may divert from the highway we want to go into now. Because I have a lot of information around that issue, which may then give us a new highway.
You have heard it at home, right? So Mfundisi is committing to yet another topic
Yes.
on a separate day to cover this issue. We're not we're not closing it, but it requires its own time. Okay. So we said today we're going to look at New Ageism as
Fine.
spiritualism, and we're going to talk about African spirituality. I think maybe let's tackle the New Age, because I think the African one will take us a bit long.
Yes.
So please just define for us again what New Ageism is. I know you gave us a definition last week, but what is New Ageism?
New Ageism is one of the major composite doctrines the devil is advancing in the modern age. Of course, there are scholars who say that it has been around longer than its formalization in the recent centuries or recent decades. Because New Ageism comes from the fall of man in the garden. Anything evil has its root in what happened in the Garden of Eden. That's one thing, that's a primary premise you need to understand. Immortality of the soul. And all these other things that, the trick of the devil is that for every decade, for every generation, he remodels the original lie. There's nothing new in the kitchen of the devil. All he does is add salt to a stew that had curry, and he adds sugar to something else. All these are his dishes. There's only one challenge, one issue. There are only two entities in the universe, goodness and badness. And goodness has no way of morphing itself into a variety of things, but evil has that way, has the capacity of morphing itself into various formations in order to deceive.
Okay, so please simplify it. When we say New Age, what are we talking about?
We're talking about theories that are centered on self-righteousness. I can produce righteousness on myself. I am a little god myself. You see, the devil has told the old first lie in various ways to various communities. To Europeans, he brings intellectual philosophies of diversion. To Africans, he brings practices that divert them from goodness. And many of them, and all of them, they center around death. If you study all of them, they center around the nature of dead people. Spooks, ghosts, mortality or immortality, ancestralism, and all these things. They are part of one thing, but the devil has variegated this product so that it speaks to the cultural perceptions of people. Yeah.
Caesar, maybe let me bring you in here. What has been your exposure to? I'll bring some of the practices that are attributed to New Ageism, right? And maybe just your thoughts on that. So affirmations are attributed to New Ageism, vision boards, that following your heart,
yes.
Meditation and mindfulness. So things that they look innocent. What's wrong with me saying create a vision board so that you can see what it is that you want to achieve, because that will drive you.
Yeah.
And then we Christians are coming in and then we're saying, no, actually, no, we shouldn't do that. So I don't know, what has been your exposure just to this thinking around just these practices that seem in, and they seem like,
Well, growing up in school, that looks pretty innocent, because basically that was a way for a student to put their life in order. And there's the verse in the Bible, I'm forgetting where it is particularly, but it says, where there's no vision, the people perish. So growing up, vision boards was part of homework as well. Creating a collage to see, how do you want your future to look like? What characteristics do you need to work on to make sure that you actually achieve those things? So for me, at this point in time, I have never actually experienced the evil side of New Ageism. For me, it's been pretty constructive, and it's been helping me personally in my own particular journey. I do have a vision board, and I do have affirmations, because as we have been growing up and you've been seeing that, especially with adulting, I think maybe high school would have been better, but life has taught me that you need to rely on yourself and you need to be your biggest cheerleader. So if you're not affirming yourself and you're not making sure that you work towards your own vision board, it's at the end of the day, you can't rely on people too much. It's always been me and God and how we achieve the things that I've basically put up on the vision board.
And thanks for that, because in Mfundisi, at a basic, these things seem innocent and they actually make sense. Because I mean, even the Bible talks about, guard your heart, for it is the fountain of life, and it talks about renew your mind, transform yourself by renewing your mind. So when I work with my mind and I want to only imprint positivity in my mind, when I work with my mind because I want to create, to see the future that I want to create, because when you can see it, then you can work towards it. I don't see. There's a line where it just seems innocent. I haven't gone to consult with fortune tellers and card readers and all of that. I'm not doing that because that is obviously out for me as a Christian. But there's just certain practices that are quote unquote new age that really seem harmless.
Jesus says, without me, you can do nothing. If a philosophy or an ideology or a particular practice or lifestyle is rooted in human volition and motivation only, primarily, and God is not the beginning point of it, however good or beneficial it might be, it comes from another kingdom. Because without me, you cannot do anything.
So if in my vision board there's a Bible verse in the center, and then everything else that I wish to achieve, then you're saying then it's fine?
Shakespeare said that the devil can quote scripture for his purposes.
So, Mfundisi, the challenge with these seemingly innocent practices is really that they're not from the Bible.
Remember, there is not direct opposite to truth. There is not direct opposite to truth. In the scheme of the great controversy, the opposite of truth is not falsehood. The opposite of truth is a mixture of a lie and truth. You see, that's where Marxism does not work. Because it talks about the thesis and the antithesis. The devil does not work that way. It is you who's a philosopher who thinks that way. The devil works this way. He combines what God has with what he has to form the opposite of what God has. It's the tree of life and then the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Both these run together. The evil tarnishes the good hides the evil. So that, hey, this tree is good to the eyes, tasty in the mouth, good to eat. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Remember, when you are next to that tree, you don't need faith. What you need is experiential knowledge. That is why many of us have fallen into sin, because we wanted to know how it tastes.
Fundis, and I want to just pick one of those that's becoming common. Let's take meditation, for example.
Yes, transcendental meditation.
Well, there's different forms of meditation, yes. Right? But the fundamental of it is I need to quieten everything around me so that I can then focus, so that I can center, right? And you can then do meditation that has the chanting and the Eastern type, right? But there's also the innocent type where it's just about silence. And in that silence, what's wrong with that? Because, I mean, we're already surrounded by noise. So what's wrong with me seeking silence so that I can then just center myself? I mean, that sounds innocent.
All those doctrines come from the large office called humanism. Jesus says, without me, you can't do anything. You see, all these doctrines and practices are designed to make the human autonomous. Human beings are not autonomous. They always rely on something, either an idea, an ideology, a practice, or something else. These are props the devil is using to make us act like gods. Remember, he is merely variegating through the centuries. The first lie she told Eve, for the day you eat of this fruit, your eyes will be opened and you'll be like gods.
But even the Bible tells us to meditate. It says meditate on this day and night. So is there different meanings to meditation?
Meditation must be objectively directed to a particular reality. Just meditating out of space, out of nothing, is not the issue. Otherwise, it is just vain imagination. Many of us meditate. Of course, some people do what I would call professional meditation, where they focus on a particular thing. The devil, let me tell you something. The devil will never create something that is directly opposite God's God's law. He always creates something that walks next to God's law so that you think you are going to the same direction that God is going to. And yet the central fault of all these practices is self-dependence. Without me, you can do nothing.
Oh, yeah, okay, and you can come in here, Vic. It just sounds like Christians being petty, really. Because honestly, like, I'm not there, oh, hail the evil one. I'm actually just trying, there's so much noise around me. I'm trying to quieten that. But I want to read your comment that's also coming from Monique. Thanks, Monique, for commenting. It says, I find vision boards constructive, mindfulness as well. Simply being aware of what is going around you and your inner state. For example, mindfulness when eating helps you to not overeat. They can be completely innocent and compatible with Christian teachings as long as you don't turn yourself into a little god in the process. I agree that it can't be done without Christ or solely through human volition. So, but you're saying, Fundisa, that we can't put them together.
Never put something that looks like self-articulation next to what God says. Remember, the struggle, the great controversy in the universe is not about me stealing your stuff and so on. It's about philosophies. Who do you trust ultimately? Because all these unbiblical, they are not anti, but they are unbiblical, let me say non-biblical theories and practices, put self at the center.
Here's another comment, again from Monique, who says, in terms of silence, because this is again on the meditation part, I think it's Psalms, where it says, the Lord is in his holy temple, let all the earth keep silence before him. So as Christians, we become silent before God as an act of worship and reverence. So is the difference between that and my meditation that I'm not necessarily quoting, labeling it, this is now godly silence?
Remember, human beings, apart from being physical, are deeply spiritual beings. In fact, our spirituality is superior to our physicality. And that's the ground in which the devil fits all these micro and major theologies to move us away from God. He is telling the old lie with a variety of doctrines and practices. Without me, you can do nothing.
Sizo, please come in here, because what are you hearing Mfundisi saying?
It's quite a lot, and for me, it's mind-boggling as well. And I think the one thing that's ringing in my mind right now is that we need to pray for the spirit of discernment at the end of the day.
Yes.
Because there's so much theories, there's so much innocence in what you're doing, and you don't know whether it be innocent or it's evil at the end of the day. So for me, my own personal practice is that I have a prayer with God that if there's something that I'm doing wrong, make it heavy on my heart.
Beautiful.
And don't give me peace, So I think as an individual, especially within the Christian journey, the spirit of discernment is crucial in all these things, because now it sounds like, practically speaking, if vision boards have been working for me, what do I then do? Do I then go burn my vision board tomorrow, and then what next? But I totally agree with Mfundisi when he says, Guti, with me, you cannot do anything. And that's what I also believe in. You can do all things through Christ, and without him, you can't do anything. So that's my stance.
Because here's the thing, God has also given us, and we spoke about this last week, the intellect to be able to do certain things like this. So me looking at my future and planning ahead, me wanting to plan really, and me thinking about certain things, isn't that just us living out the intellect that God has given us? So where is the line between this is just me innocently living my life and optimizing on the qualities that I have versus this is now there's a spirit behind that visioning or affirmations and all of that? Because then anything that's not written in the Bible, we can then say, okay, if it's not written in the Bible, but my intellectual expression goes beyond that.
I'm glad we're discussing this topic. I've been worried about this thing. I got worried about this thing some 5 years ago. I witnessed something in church, and I said, these people don't know that they're talking heathenism, but I won't go to them now. Let me tell you something. The battle is bigger than all of us combined. The devil has more power than the Pope. He is an archangel. He is able to morph himself into anything because he's a celestial being. He has no gender, by the way. Angels don't have gender. Don't say they're females or males. They are creatures created by God. We don't know what their nature really is. Let me just give you an irrelevant example to illustrate what this is. At one time, Sennacherib from Assyria invaded Jerusalem with 186,000 soldiers. And the king was told, they stood around the walls of Jerusalem and said to the king, please surrender, because when we move in, there will be bloodshed. The king ran to the temple, laid the letter from this guy before God, and said, we are helpless. There's an army here. You know what happened? That night, one angel from heaven was dispatched with a sword. In the morning, the 185,000 soldiers were all dead and fled. One angel. So how powerful is an angel? How much time does it take to kill 185,000 soldiers? Not 185 soldiers, not 1,800, 185,000. One sword. Lord Byron writes about it, the death of Sennacherib. Now, all I'm trying to say is, we have never seen the power of the God we worship. Because the devil has hid from us this knowledge through all these little substations he creates for all of us to come and stand and worship whatever self or an object or an animal or an ancestor and so on. We think this is all there is in the verse. There are things we have hardly understood even in the Bible. So what I'm trying to say is, it is the devil who creates models around the only model. Anything which is not by faith is sin.
Fundisi, what's your view on, again, this floating concept of energy and my energy, your energy? I mean, there's even like energy healing.
Yes.
And then certain movements evoke certain energies. What's your thought on that? Because again, that also sounds obvious.
Let me tell you one reason why I sound dogmatic around these issues. I was once an evolutionist in a family of a pastor. My father never knew till he died that he was once an evolutionist. I was once an atheist. I almost joined a secret movement in South Africa. I never knew that the people wanted to give me a bursary to study Glasgow were linked to the Illuminatis. My father forced me to go to Bethel College. I only discovered after I left Bethel College that the bursary would have come from the Illuminati. Because they were busy recruiting boys. I went to school in Swaziland. The top class boys in every school to study. Some of the bursaries, by the way, we get to study in overseas universities are funded by secret organizations. Fine. Here is the point. The reason why I am this firm is that I know how I felt when I was lost. I started rereading the Bible from Revelation back, and I've read the Bible 26 times now, in order to affirm, to remove the debt in which I was. In my first year at Bethel, I was a problem. The story is long. I wrote it in a book. But all I'm trying to say is, without me, you can do nothing. Because the issue about life is not material success, it's not academic success. The question is, will I be saved when it returns?
But Fundisi, we spoke about this last week to say, I'm not just physical or mental, I'm spiritual as well. So there's the non-physical, non-tangible part of me. And when people talk about energy, they almost refer to that. You know, when you walk into a room, there's a change in the energy and you feel something. She's nodding with me because it's language that we use. Could that not be just another way of referring to the spiritual nature?
I grant you validity as far as your sensing of the presence of energy. But I take a U-turn when you tell me that there's a movement now that's establishing a new paradigm in your life and a new practice and so on. You see, the verse that says, without me, you cannot do anything, is central to human salvation because we can't save ourselves. The struggle you and I have now, the devil has hidden. The struggle centers around the fact that impure Christianity was brought to this continent. We think we're dealing with impure Christianity and impure doctrines. No, we're dealing with an impure Christianity, which has resulted into all these doctrines. Then that impure Christianity, unfortunately, is inside the Adventist church in the first place. Because the missionaries who came here were fundamentalist racists, Kuyperian racists. The Boers came from 17th century Kuyperian Dutch reformism, they are in the church. That is why it is difficult for white to live with us, not because they hate us, because they have embraced, they were brought up with doctrines that say they are superior to black people.
I want to bring you in here, V, because again, at the risk of it sounding like old people's language and young people's language, and then some of us were in between there, but we do talk about that, the laws of attraction. Again, if you put it out there, it will come back to you, and it doesn't sound unbiblical. I may not have a verse for it, but even the Bible doesn't the Bible talk about the goodness that you do to others, at the risk of exposing my ignorance? But again, I want to bring you in here because these things seem innocent, isn't it? They seem innocent, and it's language that even us amongst us as Christians, we use.
Could I prefix her comment? Keep them. All that I was saying was, there's a battle. The devil never gives you an axe. He gives you the same fork you are using to eat, but he tarnishes it with his own purposes. Remember, God says, without faith, you cannot please me. The devil says you need to know in order to please him. Go
Well,
ahead.
I guess the energies basically are a reflection of our foundations as individuals, because you do experience, for instance, different auras when people come in. It becomes negative. Other people, they just have positive light as you go on. Even with me, it also depends, I guess, on how you are during the day, what's going on through your life, and then there you go with the affirmations again, trying to turn away from the negative energy by speaking life into the current situation and forgetting about the negative energy so that you just continue being positive throughout. So it's innocent in its sense, yes, it's true. I see the innocence in it. Like I said, I haven't experienced the evil side of what Umfundisi is referring to. But I feel like as individuals, we need to be also self-aware of our energies that we put out as well, and also be self-aware of our foundations, what's on our mind, what's going through our spirits as well. What are we, because the Bible says by beholding we become changed.
Yes.
So I think it's a constant thing that goes on in our lives, whether we are aware of it or not, hence the importance of being self-aware of our energies. Yeah.
Because you hear, I mean, there's a saying in my language, it's Xhosa, that will say, we understand, you know, and it's not physically understand, but there's something about your presence,
Yes.
which then people will refer to, it's your energy, right? That there's something about your energy that's just weighing heavy on me somehow. And so when then I read more about energies, I don't discard that, because already I'm like, but there's parts of that we've already accepted that actually exist. Last one before we move on is, what are your thoughts on astrology and, you know, the stars and what's your star sign and all of that? I mean, I'm giggling as I'm saying that, but we still use it. We'll say, oh, you're a Scorpio, therefore, right? Can we access those things and use them and refer to them in innocent?
If the sun is 95 kilometers away from us, how far is a star?
95 kilometers.
94 million kilometers away from us.
I was
How
gonna say it's not
far
bad enough.
are stars? Stars are suns, by the way. How does Scorpion affect me because I was born in November? Does it know? It's inanimate material.
That's what I'm saying. Is it not just in fun and in jest? Because I don't necessarily, I mean, I'm
I see.
Scorpio as well.
Yes,
I don't
yeah.
think, so is there any harm in me, like, just referring to
No,
it?
no, there's no harm there. I thought you were evoking a philosophy and an ideology. There's no problem there. I'm a Scorpion, for instance. I'm a Scorpion.
So we must stay away from you.
I got you. Be careful.
No,
Yeah.
because again, we then tend to come across as Christians as very heavy and negative and dismissive of, like, there's no lightness in us because we're very quick to demonize everything and throw it out there. And that's why I'm asking, can we not
Yes.
be light about
Here
some
is
of
my
these
last statement, summary statement. I do believe that our nature cannot be explained by science and biology and chemistry. It can ultimately be explained through cosmic spirituality, because only God knows what he put into us. The devil was not there. He only comes to distort it, which is why David says we are wonderfully and fearfully made. I do believe that all of us have a range of thought and feeling and experience that is beyond what science can explain. But if our consciousness is not surrendered to God, another creature may ride the car in the highway and divert it to his own destination.
Okay, and then also I've just had a thought. What are your thoughts around hypnosis? Hypnosis in scientific, not Eastern, basically, and I know you spoke about psychologists last week, where I do a regression to go back to the childhood issues or the trauma that I experienced, so that we can then unearth those emotions and the thoughts around that. That's the basic medical or psychological aspect of hypnosis. But does hypnosis, I've heard Christians say hypnosis then opens you to spirits.
Let me tell you something. God always works from the future. The devil always works from the past. Because the devil does not know the past. He has partial knowledge of the past. Yeah, of the future. But he has definite knowledge of where you come from. So that's why he evokes ancestors, because he knows a lot about them. He does not tell you about heaven. The devil never tells you about what's going to happen in heaven. No. He knows. You see, the devil is recruiting people who will burn with him, because he knows he has lost it. So he must go back to our history, because our history is dregs. Evoke those who are dead to speak to us. And yet they were failures in their own lives. They speak about cars when they were riding carts. They tell you about stuff they never saw. The devil never creates something natural. He always distorts reality so that you see a mirage of reality.
But in a concept that says, I was involved in an accident last week and I'm stuck in that loop and I need to get out of that.
Yes,
and
fine.
someone says, okay, let's use hypnosis to take you back to that incident. Again, I would think that's innocent.
You don't need hypnosis. You don't need hypnosis. Read Ellen White on it. All right. First of all, what is hypnosis? Explain it to make it simple to a member in the street. What is hypnosis?
It's a deeper form of meditation that's guided by someone else.
Where do you get it from?
What do you mean?
Where do you get it from? Where does that person get the guidance?
They're trained.
They are trained by whom? By others. What is the source of hypnosis?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out from you, because
Okay.
it's put under New Ageism
Yes.
as well.
Let me tell you something. Colonialism has very little to do with politics. It has something to do with mind and soul control. All these are aspects of colonial theories. Colonization means we capture and direct. We capture and direct. We don't need to fight. Let's say all whites in South Africa leave, will still be sinners of another type, to ancestralism and other things. Because they found us already fallen into sin. Perhaps I've become ultra. I've moved to another direct opposite, because I was once lost, and perhaps I'm in the eyes of somebody else, I might be getting too far into the right when I was in the left. But all I'm trying to say is, I have read all these theories. Let me tell you something. I also did psychology up to course 2. But I'm convinced that anything that is not done through motivation by God, from God or from Scripture, has an element, first, of secularity, self-dependence, has an element that might be coming from an innocent region in the satanic world. Because the devil never comes to you with dark clothes, a fork, and a tail. He comes to you like an angel of light. Yeah. And in the last days, by the way, here's the statement I've been wanting to say. which for me is a marker. The devil equalizes his temptations based on your social sophistication, your academic level, and your spiritual level. This discussion will be irrelevant in a rural setting where people tend after cattle, they sit around the crown and so on. They will have to discuss about ancestors and other things. But here we're discussing high-sounding theories. Why? Because we live in the urban area and we've experienced mental development a la Western education.
Well, let me bring it back then, just to say to you at home, we are live. If you have any comments or questions, please remember to send them through. Don't wait till the last minute to do so. So I want us to move on, right? And I want to bring you in here, Caesar. What's your understanding of African spirituality?
Right now, it's in progression, to be honest. It's really in process. I am doing my own research about it, following certain people who are practicing it, people who are for it, people who are against it. So I haven't really defined it for myself at this particular point in time, but I know it's a very controversial topic, especially within the church.
Mfundisi, what is African spiritualism?
African spiritualism, not African spirituality.
Yes,
All
that's
right.
it.
Parts of African spirituality are valid. Valid if they're consistent with the Word of God, even though you may not have read it. Remember, well, I'm not, the statement is valid, but it may be irrelevant here. Ellen White does confirm the fact that even while in Europe, a lot of God's light disappeared, it did not disappear in Africa. That's what Ellen White says. So all the spirituality you see in Africa, which may not be biblically rooted or informed, is an attempt by the devil to give us parts of this house. The devil never tells you a whole story. He always gives you the corner. Some he gives the window, others he gives the roof. And each one thinks that he has the whole edifice. Those guys who are sitting on the roof think they have the whole house. The ones who are carrying the windows think they have the whole house. This is the problem with all philosophies and doctrines and ideologies that are not rooted in the word. They have got partial goodness. And that is why they never make you arrive at perfection. They are models the devil steals from God. But he does not take everything. He takes a quarter, he gives you that one an eighth, he gives you 1/12, he gives me 1/100, and I think I know what life is about and so on. And all these things are good in themselves, but they are not good as a whole.
So what are we referring to when we're talking about African spirituality then?
We're talking about a spirituality rooted in the belief that there is a being above us, because African thought is theistic. It is also creationist, because our ancestors are the ones who wrote the Bible, not the other guys. And which is why you find a lot of African traditions and practices in the Bible, even in the New Testament. What then happened was that as we moved away from what we call the Middle East now, do you remember the other time I was with Mandla when I explained that the Middle East was only born in 1916, between 1916 and 1918, during the time of the First World War. That whole area covering from Sudan into what we call the Middle East, Palestine and the Near East, your Babylonian areas, Syria and so on, where all that was known as Africa. The Suez Canal was created in 1867. That's why the Jews could walk from Canaan to Egypt, from Egypt to Canaan. So as we moved away from what I would call the port, one took the salt, other one took the soup, and somebody took the plant and the cob, and the dispersion ultimately led to variations and even decompositions of the original model. We are all striving for what we lost when we moved from the center. So what the devil has done is to make the fractions whole numbers.
What makes it distinctly African? What is so African then about? Because then everyone is practicing spirituality, as we say.
Yes.
So what's African? What is specifically distinctly African spirituality?
It's a title, it's a name given to those who to practices of those who are in this continent. But no one in the world is doing anything that is different from what other people are doing. Whites are worse, for instance, on ancestral worship than blacks. Spiritualism is not in Africa. We don't believe in spirits that are running high in sky. We believe in the spirit of our ancestors. I would rather be an African ancestralist than a European spiritualist. No.
We believe in witchcraft. We believe in.
I'm coming to that one.
Okay.
Coming to that one. Yeah. But have we ever bewitched a white man? Why do we bewitch one another? All right, that's a side kick. But here is the point: the devil likes distortions. Yeah, he's the master of. He has mastered distortion. So all of us are distorted. The only thing that has blessed black thought from Adam to now is that we have never developed anthropologies and ethnologies that undermine the dignity of other people. Whites have. And that's why there was no evolutionary theory, and yet there was evolution in Europe. That's the blessing we can celebrate about traditional African thought.
So what do you say to someone who says, I'm an African, I'm expressing my Africanness, and it's not defined by Christianity or the Bible, and it's not contradicting God?
That statement comes from the fact that many Africans don't know that their ancestors wrote the Bible. And they think I have to deviate from the Bible because the Bible came here with white colonizers in 1652. They too, you see, the reason why whites are racist is that this Bible was not written by the ancestors. If it was written by the ancestors, they would not treat us the way they treat us. We wrote the Bible. There is not a single white man who wrote the Bible. And at any rate, when the Bible was completed in the compilation, whites were pagans, which is why they brought paganism into Africa. The concept pagan does not exist in African thought. That's why it's umhating, because we don't have that term in African languages. We don't have it. African life is religiously rooted.
So which aspects of my African practices before 1652 should not be practiced now? Which aspects of that?
Ancestralism. The idea that the ancestors are alive and they can talk to you and you can talk to them. That comes from, you shall not surely die. There is another thing. Ancestralism in Africa has also been influenced by Easterners, which makes the goat a strange animal in this continent. We said it recently. So as we moved from the center, we moved from the main dish, and each one started looking for a new recipe and so on. Some went into Orientalism, others went to Occidentalism, we went into Africanism.
There's a school of thought in Fundis, and I'm not telling you if you can come in, that says Africans are generally more spiritual than Westerners. Is that just us Africans trying to give ourselves some props there?
That's a universal. I've seen that statement in books and I've heard it in people uttering. There's no such a thing. All of us are spiritual. The idea is, what is the root of your spirituality? Some spiritualities are materially oriented. Others are cosmically oriented, like the African spirituality.
Mm-hmm. So, Sizo, you said you've been searching and trying to understand and to study, but what prompted that? What brought that on? Why didn't you just continue with whatever Christianity is saying?
Because I'm trying to define what's so wrong about being African as well, that was basically spoken against when I became an Adventist. Because I think that's also one of the questions that came out through lockdown. I think everyone just went through an identity crisis. Everyone was trying to find out, what does it mean to be an African? What's wrong with ancestors? What is ancestral worship? What does it mean? So I think because there was no foundation or maybe discussion around it within the church, that's what created the curiosity. Why is it when someone is wearing the
bangle?
Yes,
it's part,
yes, it's looked down upon, or someone is treated different for that, and we only are African on Heritage Day when we put on our regalia, but then any other day it's looked down upon or it's frowned down upon. Like the incident that happened at that mall where the man was in his regalia, but he was asked to turn around, you know. Whereas in other countries, I've been to Swaziland, people are always in their regalia, even when they're going to the mall. You come to South Africa, you do the same thing. There's something wrong with it. So because it's something that it's always shied down upon in the church, this whole concept of being an African culture. Oh no, I'm a Christian, we don't do that. What is it about the African practices that we don't do, and where does it offend God? And I think that's, for me, that's my biggest research that I'm doing right now. Ukuthi, if I do this practice, where does it offend God? And there's a part of me that doesn't want to believe that God has a problem with me being African, because even throughout lockdown, I was following Pastor Stu Blose, where he asked this thought-provoking question, Guti, as a Black Adventist, what have you had to give up to become an Adventist? As opposed to other cultures, your Indians, your white people, we seem to give up more when it comes to taking upon this thing of Adventism, being Christian. So why is it that we do that? And what is it about our practices that then push us to do it so willingly, because you believe the less African I am, the more Christian I become?
Mfundisi, I mean, there's so many things that she has raised there, but are we really not just throwing out everything in the quest of enlightenment? No, in English, closest to Gopoka. You know, are we not throwing out everything that was really helping us to connect with God? Because a lot of Africans are at that quest, and they're saying, if I can't connect with God in who I am, then yeah, there's a problem, because now I'm trying to put on clothes that don't fit me and do things that don't fit me, and there's something missing. So are we not just also running that danger of then just throwing us the baby with the bathwater?
Thank you. I think we've arrived at a juncture where certain things must be declared once and for all. Number one, the Bible was not written in England. The Bible was written in Africa. It was not written by the ancestors of Queen Elizabeth. It was written by the ancestors of Niga, of Shaga, of Dingan, of Barotse, and everybody who is dark-skinned. This needs to be clear. Adventists, wherever you are seated, you are reading a book, we are reading a text written by your ancestors. Stop insulting African thought, African culture. There are distortions in all cultures, but the history of Africans is rooted in a biblical tradition. All these things that we have degenerated into are an attempt to go back to the original. When whites came here, I'm talking about Adventist whites, that embraced secular paganism from Europe. They brought it here and they called it Adventism. We don't have isms in Africa. We have practices, because Africans don't have no theory of religion. They practice religion. In Africa, religion is not a theology. It is a practice. You get the point? So we need to announce a turning point now and say, stop denigrating African culture. The idea, for instance, if I came to this church dressed in a Ibeshu, the deacons must not throw me out. I'm dressed in my culture, because this is European culture. Adventists, wherever they are, whites or blacks, need to know from today that the whites who came here, your Haskells and so on, were advocating Western religion and not biblical Adventism.
So, Mfundisi, it sounds like we need to, as Africans, to just go back and do a to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. Because right now, it feels like it's come one, come all. You either become Christian or you remain African. And then we have this identity crisis. And hence the quest for African spirituality, for example, because people are going back and saying, no. But who am I before 1652, and how was I connecting with God before 1652? But I think we also need to then be honest with ourselves in terms of what are those things that were actually driving us away from connecting with God, even before 1652. We have a few minutes left, but I want us just in those few minutes, what do we say to this seemingly rise of people who are getting the calling? Because there seems to be, I mean, when I was growing up, people were getting the calling, were few and far in between, and they were out there in the mountains. Suddenly now everyone knew twice. What do you, and they're claiming again their Africanity. Africanism.
Let me tell you
with that.
something. Because African people were ravaged by colonialists, merchants from Europe, thieves who wanted to steal not only our wealth but our souls. Africans have been left with almost nothing. The only thing they have is their bodies and their history and their culture. So they are now seeking for relief from those paradigms. But because there is no controlling text like the Bible, because the Bible itself has been abused, you get the point? They are now developing theories and sub-theories, micro-ideologies to meet the thirst for God in their souls. All these things my sister is discussing are right in themselves, but they all meet in the search for that which is the ultimate truth, God with us.
As Adventists, we have a concept of present truth. Is that not just present truth?
Present truth, what's present truth?
Well, as Adventists, we have
If
that
it's truth,
concept.
it's eternal. It's not present. Truth does not grow rust. It is practices that rust. But truth is that the other name of Jesus. It can't go rust. I don't believe in this idea of present truth. What was Miller teaching? He was teaching the truth of that time. Today we don't talk about 1844 because it's gone. We're now talking about persecution, the second coming of Jesus. At every stage in the history of the church, there is immediacy. We preach about repent now, for the kingdom of God is because you don't last forever. So for me, truth is not relative, but it's contextual.
Well, that's what I'm trying to express. Is that not what? Because the Bible also does say in the end times there will be a rise in spirituality.
Yes, yeah.
Is that not just what we're experiencing? And because I don't attribute it to church and I'm African, it just looks wrong, or I haven't found a home for it, and so the practice yokutwasa quickly defines it for me. Is that not really where we are? That we're being spiritually awakened?
Our challenge does not lie in what you say. Our challenge lies in the fact that the Christian church, including the Adventist church, have failed to evangelize Africans from a valid godly model. We have colonized the souls of African people, including in the Adventist church. And that's why we have all these seemingly unanswerable questions. And that's why we have behaviors now that we think are against the Bible. We are in serious trouble. Adventists in Africa and in the African community need to know that the faith they have has been adulterated by Western heresies.
So last thought in the last minute, and I want this to be your closing
Yes.
your closing thought, right? And then I'll give you a chance to also finish off. Is that as an African who wants to be true to what I feel is me, African,
Yes.
but who also wants to be true to the teachings that I've received in the canon, for example,
Yes.
and people like yourselves, abafundisi. Where do I turn to find that place where I feel safe enough to show up and say, but I'm an African, rhythm is in me, all of those things. At the same time, I'm not going I'm not falling into the trap of the devil, who knows that there's this hunger in me to find meaning and purpose where we started with those questions.
I think this is a very valid question to summarize the discussion. We wrote the Bible. Let's go back to it and read it. And while you are reading it, God will speak things into your soul. Let's make a declaration from today that this is our book. Let's retrieve it from all those who deceived us since 15:2 and beyond. This is our book. As we read it from Genesis to Revelation, God will speak to us a language that whites can't speak to us.
Caesar, just your last comments on this, and I don't know if it has had any impact in your quest that you're on. Has it brought any new thoughts to you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking we're at the risk of demonizing a lot of things that we don't need to demonize.
Yes.
And individually speaking, even in my personal journey, spirit, like discernment, is important. And I think in everything that we do and everything that we discover, if we can just put it at the feet of the Lord, He will direct us. And if we're deviating away from truth, and if it is really truth that we're deviating from, I trust that God will bring us back to it.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for your comments. We had quite a few of those. I think I'll just read one or two, but we appreciate the interaction. So Atio Mlanjane says, excellent point by Mfundisi about how deception works. And I think this was in our earlier conversation. He says, it mimics something that is good, but it isn't. Even what the devil told Eve through the snake kind of made sense and was seemingly reasonable, but it actually wasn't. And then Monique, I want to read this part. She says in inverted commas, stop insulting African thought. And she highlights that and she says, I hope more people hear this discussion and take it very seriously. And I want to end it there to say, we've tried to unpack spirituality from different angles. And again, we've tried to do justice in a 2-hour session on something that is broader than that. But I'm hoping what you've taken out of here is that you have a spirit nature that God uses to connect with you. And as Caesar is saying, pray for the spirit of discernment from God, that you don't fall into the trap of the seemingly innocent things that quote unquote make sense but are not of God, because the devil is not going to come here and bring you poison. He's going to bring you something that is sweet and looks good and sounds right. As Eve said, it looks good to the eye, but it's actually destroying you. So from that note, I pray that we all go through this journey of really seeking ourselves and connecting deeper with God and allowing and praying for God to help us to grow spiritually. Thank you very much. Until the next time, have a blessed day further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Lord, I don't feel no ways tired.